Many things became popular during the 1970s. These fun things included lava lamps, mood rings, Rubik's Cubes, smiley face stickers, and finally, pet rocks. Hello there, meet my new best friend. His name is Bob. He is the most loyal friend of all. He never leaves me and always listens. It may not be right to teach friends tricks, but he knows how to stay very well. It's almost like he doesn't have legs. The Watergate scandal was a political scandal that occurred in the United States in the 1970s as a result of the June 1972 break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C., and the Nixon administration's attempted cover-up of its involvement. On August 29th at a news conference, President Nixon stated that Dean conducted a thorough investigation of the matter, when in fact Dean had not conducted any investigation at all. Nixon also said, "I can say categorically that no one in the White House staff, no one in this administration presently employed was involved in this very bizarre incident." It was revealed that President Nixon had a tape recording system in his offices, and he had recorded many conversations. Recordings from these tapes implicated that Nixon tried to cover up the break-in. After a lot of court battles, the U.S. Supreme Court requested that President Nixon turn in the tapes to government investigators. Nixon didn't release all of the tapes because of vital information that was held on them. The Sunday Night Massacre outraged the public and led to increased calls to impeach Nixon. It was only 4 months later, when Nixon released all the tapes, that the Americans found out the truth. Nixon had directed the Watergate cover-up and had authorized illegal activities, but he still refused to step down. Facing conviction, Nixon decided to resign. "I have never been a quitter. To leave the office before my term is completed is opposed to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow," stated Nixon. On August 9, 1974, Vice President Gerald Ford was sworn in as the 38th President of the United States. His new vice president was Nelson Rockefeller. Ford was not liked from the start of his presidency because a month in, he granted Nixon a full pardon. Because of this, his popularity rate dropped from 72% down to 49%. Ford continued to run into problems, but now with the Democratic majority in Congress, Ford vetoed a number of social welfare bills. In fact, he vetoed more bills than any other president had in such a short time. One of Ford's main goals was to combat inflation, which was being fueled by the energy crisis and the soaring cost of oil. Ford tried to cut the federal spending to curb this issue. Ford requested $722 million in military aid for Cambodia and South Vietnam. Congress turned down this request. Cambodia communists seized the Mayaguez, an unarmed U.S. cargo ship. In response, Ford launched a military action to retrieve the crew. 41 Americans were killed in the effort to release 39 crew members. Many citizens criticized this action hasty and ill-timed, as the facts were later revealed, and the Mayaguez crew had already been released when the troops were sent. For many people, disco is the genre of music most readily associated with the 1970s. But the 70s saw the emergence of hard rock as one of the most prominent subgenres of rock music. Bands such as Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, The Who, AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, Queen, Rolling Stones, and Kiss were highly popular by the mid-70s. And the first email was sent in the 1970s, and this invention is still widely used today. Ford narrowly won the party's nomination over Ronald Reagan of California. Robert Dole was his vice president. Jimmy Carter, a former governor of Georgia, won the nomination with Senator Walter Mondale of Minnesota as his running mate. Congresswoman Barbara Jordan of Texas gave a keynote address at the Democratic Convention. She brought a strong sense of moral authority to the Democratic Party. She also played a key role in drawing up impeachment charges against President Nixon. Carter promised never to lie to the American people and openly noted he was a born-again Christian whose religious ethics strongly shaped his actions. In a close election, Carter captured 297 electoral votes to Ford's 240. Carter brought a folksy style to the White House, abandoning much of the pomp and ceremony of previous presidents. But his family became the subject of much public interest. The news media reported on the activities of Carter's young daughter, Amy, and on the views of his outspoken mother, Miss Lillian. Carter's wife, Rosalind, received even more attention than one of his most trusted advisors. The Panama Canal was built to connect the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. Carter's stand on the Panama Canal caused even greater controversy. He supported Panama's right to control the zone and pushed for the passage of the Panama Canal treaties. These treaties granted Panama control over the operations by the year of 2000 while safeguarding U.S. security interests. Critics charged Carter that he was just giving away the canal. "We built it, we paid for it, it's ours, and we're going to keep it," stated Ronald Reagan. OPEC, the Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. In the fall of 1973, during a new Arab-Israeli war, OPEC quadrupled oil prices. Many Arab countries cut off oil shipments to the U.S. because the U.S. supported Israel in the war. In response to Arab countries not bringing their prices down, President Nixon announced a program to make the United States less dependent on foreign oil. He called for energy conservation and signed a bill authorizing the construction of a pipeline to bring the oil south. The Camp David Accords. Not long before the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, Carter engineered his chief foreign policy triumph, a Middle East peace accord. In September 1978, Sadat met with Begin and Carter at Camp David, a presidential retreat in Maryland. There, after 12 days of negotiations, the three agreed on a framework for peace, which became known as the Camp David Accords. Iran had been regarded as critical to the U.S. security in the Middle East. In the 1950s, the United States had helped overthrow Iran's leader and restore the Shah to power. In 1979, however, followers of a militant Islamic leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, forced the Shah to leave the country. November 4th of 1979, in an effort to force the Shah's return to Iran for trial, Iranian militants seized 53 American hostages at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran's capital. In 1980, a rescue mission failed when the U.S. military helicopters crashed in the Iranian desert, killing 8 Americans. As frustration over the crisis mounted, public anger at Carter did also. Many felt that his inability to free the hostages signaled America's decline as a symbol in power. Ronald Reagan attacked Carter as a weak president who presided over a decline in America's power. Reagan's promise was to make America strong again. After Carter's defeat, Carter continued to negotiate for the release of the hostages. On January 20th, 1981, after 444 days in captivity, the hostages were finally freed, just a moment after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president. The top 10 movies of the 70s. 10, The Deer Hunter. 9, Taxi Driver. 8, Jaws. 7, Star Wars. 6, A Clockwork Orange. 5, Chinatown. 4, Apocalypse Now. 3, The One That Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 2, The Godfather Part 2, and 1, The Godfather. The top TV shows of the 70s. Saturday Night Live, abbreviated SNL, is an American late-night television show. The show premiered on NBC on October 11, 1975, under the original title of NBC's Saturday Night. Sesame Street is an American children's television series. The program is known for its educational content and creativity communicated through the use of the Muppets. The Brady Bunch Show was a comedy series on ABC about a lonely man and woman who fell in love and decided to marry. The lady had 3 girls and the man had 3 boys. Despite those difficulties, they band together as best could be expected and became the Brady Bunch. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973. This act forbade discrimination in jobs, education, or housing because of physical disability. In response to protests, state and local governments passed laws requiring wheelchair ramps and special parking spaces at public facilities. Education for All Handicapped Children Act. In 1975, the act required public schools to provide education for children with physical and mental disabilities. The Equal Rights Amendment. This proposed a constitutional amendment barring discrimination on the basis of sex. The ERA received strong support from the NOW, or the National Organization for Women, and other women's groups. Phyllis Schlafly was one of the most vocal critics of the ERA during the 1970s and 80s. Thanks to medical advances, Americans were living longer, a phenomenon referred to as the graying of America. For years, experts have been promoting this level of zero population growth. This means that the birth rate replaces the existing population but does not increase it. This is an effort to prevent overpopulation.